People are attracted to authenticity, but it's hard to define for me. Here's my best attempt. True alignment of what you think, what you say, and what you do. The hardest part is realizing that our thoughts are fucked and that we have to fix them instead of faking the next two.
Wholeheartedly agree.
You said it.
Man. Yeah, that's dead on.
Well, I've got a really cool idea. Herostratic fame. Many people would rather be hated than unknown. In ancient Greece, Herostratus burned down the temple of Artemis purely so that he would be remembered. Nowadays, we have nuisance influencers who stream themselves committing crimes and harassing people purely for clout. Herostratic fame.
Yeah, that's like you gain the world, but you lose your soul. Kind of. I mean, I'm also the last person to judge. And so like, if that's what you want, then by all means do it.
I don't think it's what people want. I think that they think it's what they want. I've been playing with this idea or this name, one of the concepts that the book will be focused on, intentionalism.
Mm-hmm.
And Essentialism by Greg McKeown's one of my favorite ever books. And I figured it would be a nice like hat nod. Doing what you mean to do and wanting what you want to want is so fucking hard to do and so rare because we're built to conform.
I think one of my life goals, and I can summarize it in a question, but is to be fearless. And it's, I mean, equal opposite, courage is another word. But I love this question, which is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I love thinking about that when I'm thinking about big life decisions. Like, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And it's usually like the big one, the bigger thing that I really want to do, but I'm afraid to do it. It's like, that's what I should do. And to your point about, you had the 5 things that you told your team. The one that we have is, originally it was something that we called 1 of 1, which is make only things that we can make. Like, you'll never see a Coca-Cola business breakdown from Alex Hormozi because anyone can do a Coca-Cola business breakdown. That's not 1 of 1 content. But if I say, I doubled the sales of this company by implementing these 4 things, no one else can say that because no one else did it, right? And so it's 1 of 1. And so as the book launch and whatnot came, we took 1 of 1 and it became this big, massive thing. And it stopped being about like, what can only do things that only we can do. It was about doing things that we didn't even know we could do yet, which became 1 of 0. And that's why that became the brand that I'm going to continue to wear for the next few years, and build that association. But I think that kind of encapsulates my personal life goal, which is like, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? And the idea that I will never wish for fewer epic stories at the end of my life. And I've never regretted failures. I've always regretted things that I didn't try. And so just along those lines of trying to create more bias internally towards action rather than inaction, and normalizing consequences of failure as we said earlier, win or learn. And I think that little frame, believe it or not, for anyone who's like on the teetering edge of like, what should I do that thing? When I was debating quitting my job, which is still the hardest decision I've made to this day, still of the many that I've made, was I figured that if I didn't make the entrepreneurship thing work, I would have a hell of a story for business school. And that was actually like the reasoned argument that I gave myself for being willing to quit, was that I think that with my experience, I'll still be able to get a job and I'll have a really cool story of entrepreneurship that I could use to apply to get into business school and then eventually get a job later. And so most times we catastrophize any failure to death, right? Which is like, I'm going to fail, I'm gonna lose all my money, I'm gonna be homeless, no one's going to talk to me, and I'm going to die, right? But like, if you play it out 2 natural steps, like, okay, I lose everything. What do? I would probably have a couch or floor that someone would lend me, because at least socially, I haven't fucked everyone I know. And so I have that. It's like, okay, so I would have some capacity to do that. Okay, is there anything that I could do in the meantime in order to make money? Well, sure. I could drive Uber and strip. And I've already, I've told this story before, but for me, that was genuinely my plan B, because I knew that I could probably make 70, 80 grand a year driving Uber. I could probably make 150 stripping, maybe 200. Strip at the gay bars, the guys pay better. And then, boom, I've got 280,000 a year. I could live on the floor and then I could restart again. And so that's because I don't have a lot of shame with that kind of stuff. That's not like, that doesn't matter to me. But I think playing out the fear, Layla says this and I love it, but that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. And so it looks like this ocean that you're going to step into and drown. But as soon as you step into it, you realize it was not that deep at all and you can keep walking through it. And I just love that visual because a lot of times when it's like we have this anxiety around this big decision we have to make, if you actually take the step and realize that it's not death, you're not going to drown immediately. There's plenty of other steps you can take from there, even if you get a little wet.
Did I tell you my story about a friend who went through a cancellation and was worried he was a coward?
Oh, like a public cancellation thing? Okay.
So I went for dinner quite a while ago now with this guy that I was pretty interested in, and he knew what I did, and we sort of bumped into each other and, what are you doing? Let's go for dinner. And I knew about the situation that he'd been through, but he didn't know that I knew. So I was like, tell me. Like, there's no pressure, and he was able to be unencumbered. And basically he went through like a tough cancellation where kind of the whole world came down to bear on him. And he was telling me this story. I was in a very interesting time. I was like being very reflective. And he said, my whole life I'd been worried that I was a coward. I was terrified that I was a coward. But I'd never been through a situation where I'd had to bring absolutely everything to bear on my life. And I'm a hard man, and I like to hang around with hard men, and I like to shoot guns and do jiu-jitsu and be around Navy SEALs and stuff like that. But I always had this fear in the back of my mind that I might secretly be a coward. And then he said the cancellation thing happened, and it wasn't a very difficult 1-rep max. It wasn't a really hard CrossFit workout. It was something outside of his control. And he used this term that I love, and he said, I could always hear my better self clearing his throat in the room next door. And I always wondered what would happen if I had to really, really wrangle everything, if the whole world came crashing down on me. And I wanted to work out whether or not I was a coward. And he said, thankfully, he kicked the door in and came through. But I just love that I could always hear my better self clearing his throat in the room next door. But he'd never been fully tested. Done lots of hard things, a lot of acclaim, very successful, blah, blah, blah. But we all know, that's your thing, right? Like, but I'll know about whether or not you've left something on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And there was always just 5% still in the tank when he was doing things, about how he felt, about how invested he was. He always had a get out of jail free card in one way or another. And I love that. I could always hear my better self clearing his throat in the room next door.
2 things on that. So I think if we're consolidating some of the points we were making earlier, the "but I'll know" refrain, I think that a lot of the personal excellence comes down to making the "but I'll know" more important than the what will everyone else think? Because I think the true test of whether you're a quote perfectionist or not is if everyone else in the room says it's exceptional, and then you say, "But I'll know it's not because I don't think it's exceptional yet." If you still break what everyone else believes is beautiful so that you can make the thing that you make it the way you want it to make, or make it the way you want it to be, I think that is probably like the truest test of whether or not you really do value your own opinion over those of other people's. And if you really want to be true to quote the art, whatever your art is, art, I'm using it as a generic term. It could be the career or even like the financial projections that you're supposed to do at your company. Like, there is a way you could do it and do it absolutely fucking excellent. And there's a way you could do it that you could phone it in and probably not get in trouble. But the thing is that you'd know. And then you'd be the type of person who always phones it in. And that to me is disgusting. And that would make me disgusted with me. And that is the thing that would make me want to peel my skin off, because I would hate me. And I think that's why so many people do hate them, because they do settle and they do make these things and they do know and still ignore it. And so they ignore the man in the other room who's clearing his throat, and they shut the door and they lock it and they never let that guy in. And so they look like everyone else, they act like everyone else, and they get what everyone else gets.
Alex, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. What's next? What can people expect from you next few months?
Well, all my effort is in the Skool Games. So I can talk about them. I can not talk about them. Yeah. So I just made the biggest investment of my life. I'm now co-owner of Skool.com. It's a platform where you can build what you want to build, learn what you want to learn, and schools will give you the tools, the community, and the education to help you. And so we've actually created a whole thing where people can start all this stuff for free. Because I believe my whole platform has been education. That's what I believe in. I think the education system is broken, and teachers don't get paid or given the resources to actually teach students. And they're supposed to teach tests that they know don't help students. Students get educated on stuff that doesn't matter in the real world, and they go into mountains of debt for a piece of paper that doesn't make them anything to pay off the debt that they're in for the rest of their lives. And I hate all of it, which is why we started making the content that we do. And so this is one big investment that I'm doing to try and make my small dent towards helping fix that. And I obviously talk about business. That's what I know. Okay. But one person can't do that. Like, I can't change. I mean, I can try, but like, I don't think one person's going to change the world. And so, I wanted to invest in a platform that would help other people do that for one another. And so whether it's like, you know how to paint and you want to teach people to paint, you know how to fix Hondas and you want to teach people to do that. Like, there are so many more useful skills that we can trade with one another. And I think Ben Franklin said, there's no more noble a deed than to help another know more, to educate. And I wholeheartly believe that. And so, I mean, that's what I'm investing my dollars and my time into. And so, yeah, that's like my whole next year.